burden and the blueprint for completing our assignment. The burden and the blueprint for completing our assignment. So tonight, as we prepare to move forward, let's go ahead and recap our key verses. Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. They said to me, things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah. They're in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. When I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned, I fasted, I prayed to the God of heaven. Nehemiah 6, 15 and 16. So on October 2nd, the wall was finished, just 52 days after we had begun. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. So that's the part that we want to look at, is that they completed the assignment. They completed the assignment that God had given them. They fasted, they prayed, they wept, they put a plan in place, and they completed their assignment. So that's the whole purpose of this series, is they were able to finish what God had placed on their heart. All right. They had fulfilled the assignment, the God-given assignment that he has placed on their heart. So I want to start by doing a recap of last week. Last week we talked about there's a battle that begins within you. All right. There's a concern for the cause. There's a concern for the cause. Nehemiah asked, how are my people? How is my hometown? How is my city? And they said, it's in ruins. It's in ruins. And so there was a cause. There was a cause. Other people were living beneath their means. They were living beneath what God had for them. And then he was the cupbearer. He was comfortable in his position. All right. So there's a burden. There's a battle that goes on between the concern for the cause and the comfort with contentment. All right. And then we looked at the blueprint. The blueprint of the assignment begins with prayer. All right. Prayer should be your first resort, not your last option. All right. So there are four things that he did in his prayer. He exalts God and praises God for who he is. Purposeful prayer involves confession. Purposeful prayer involves repetition of the promises. And then purposeful prayer involves specific petitions. He went to God specifically what he needed and what he desired for the assignment. And then third, the assignment has opportunity and opposition. But the beauty is God does not allow opposition to come until the plan is in place. And then last but not least, as you make progress, expect opposition to intensify. All right. So that was the last thing we talked about. As you make progress, expect opposition to intensify. So let's jump into it tonight. The walls of Jerusalem lie in ruins for 142 years. All right. It lie in ruin for 142 years. The people had grown accustomed to living in dysfunction. All right. The people had grown accustomed to living in dysfunction. The people had grown accustomed to living below God's standard. The people had normalized residing in ruins. All right. So let that sink in. For 142 years, they got up every day and they saw all of the dysfunction. They saw all the ruins. They saw all of the rubble, and they just went on like ain't nothing ever happened. They had grown accustomed to living below God's standard. They had become accustomed to living in this dysfunction. They were comfortable with chaos. So the question I want to ask tonight is, could the same be said about us? Could the same be said about us? Is it possible that we can become so numb to the news we hear every day? Could it be that we become numb to somebody else got shot? There was another mass shooting. There's corruption in the city, corruption in the church, corruption in the community. There's sexual immorality all around us. There's all kind of stuff, and we just go about our business like, we're used to it. So I think when you look at the people in Jerusalem living with broken down walls, living in dysfunction, and how Nehemiah had a burden that we don't supposed to live like this. We are better than this. Could the same be said about us today, that we've become numb? We've become numb to just doing the same old routine and then hearing something, oh well, don't involve me. And we keep going on while God is sending somebody to do something about it. All right. So for 142 years, they lived with broken walls. They lived in dysfunction. And then finally, God placed it on the heart of one individual to build up what's been torn down. So let me say that one more time. For 142 years, everybody walked around it like it's nothing. They just walked around and said, well, maybe we just supposed to live like that. It's not bothering me. I'm not going to bother it. And then finally, God placed it on one person's heart. He placed it on one individual's heart to build up what's been torn down for 142 years. This one individual had the vision to get the job done. All right. So one individual had the vision to get the job done. What is vision? What is vision? We said it several series ago. Vision is foresight with insight based on hindsight. All right. Vision is foresight with insight based on hindsight. What does that mean? Foresight is looking through a telescope. That's big picture. That's the destiny. When Nehemiah heard about it, he could see a day when the walls were back up again. All right. In his mind, he had enough foresight that he can look down the road and see the walls being built. All right. But then he says, let me look around and see what the damage looked like. Let me look at the details. Let me pull out my microscope and see the details. Let me count the cost. Let me see what I'm signing up for. All right. So he had foresight to see the end. He had insight to look around, but then he had hindsight to look in the rearview mirror to see what had already been done. He knew somebody had tried to do it before and got discouraged. He knew that somebody had discourage others from doing it. So he knew what he was getting into. And so many times we lose vision because we can't put the three together. We're out of balance. I'm talking to somebody tonight. The reason why you can't move forward with the vision God gave you, because you keep focusing on hindsight. Well, I tried it before and such tried it before and they couldn't get it done. Well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. I guess it wasn't. No, you keep looking back. Then you don't have foresight. You can't look far down the road to see what shall be because you keep looking around at what is. All right. So vision says I can see big picture. I can look around and see what the challenges are. And I can also look back and see this is not going to be easy. Others have tried it. I can learn from their mistakes. Now watch this. Although Nehemiah was given the vision, he needed to inspire the people to complete the assignment. All right. So God gave one person the vision, but that one person had to inspire the people to complete the assignment. God will never give you a vision that you have to do by yourself. All right. He will never give you a vision that you have to complete by yourself. Remember what Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 2 says. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain on tablets so that they can run with it who read it. All right. So let's go a little deeper. The people who complete great work for the Lord are people that are able to see the whole trip in their minds before they leave the dock. All right. People with great vision, people who do great things for the Lord. You can see yourself running the business. You can see yourself as the CEO. You can see yourself starting the school. You can see yourself doing what God has called you to do. You can see yourself living above and not beneath. You can see yourself, and you will never do it if you can't see it first. Whew, Lord have mercy. So they have these people have a vision for the destination. They understand what it will take to get there. They know who they'll need to be on the team to be successful, and they recognize obstacles long before they appear on the horizon. All right. So if you want to do something great for the Lord, if you want to complete your assignment, you need to understand what it's going to take to get there. You need to know who's going to be on your team, and you need to recognize there are going to be obstacles along the way. All right. So completion requires three things: knowing your purpose. Knowing your purpose. What has God called you to do? What is that one thing? What is that burden that keeps you up at night? What is that burden that keeps you tossing and turning? Well, Pastor, I don't have one. You need to find out your purpose. All right. And then once you know your purpose, make your plan. Make your plan. Sit down. Write your plan out. Write your vision. Make it plain so that you have a blueprint. You have a map to get to where you're trying to get to. And then number 3, understand there's a process. All right. Understand there's a process. The enemy can't stop your purpose, but he can make you give up in the process. Let me say that one more time. The enemy can't stop your purpose. What God has for you, it's for you. All right. But the enemy can get you so frustrated, so defeated that you stop in the process. All right. And then the last one is vision is not the capacity to see with one's eye what's already, but the ability to imagine what it could be. All right. Visionaries have the unusual power to see the possibilities and make that vision become a reality. All right. Have you ever thought about something in your mind? Like, I like that. And then you start writing it down. You start putting your plan together. That's all vision is. That's all vision is. Vision is seeing it and then putting together a strategy, a plan to make it a reality. All right. And so that's what we're going to look at tonight. Nehemiah is going to give us a blueprint on making the vision a reality. So how do I complete the assignment that God has placed on my heart? So number 1, here's the thing we're going to talk about tonight. Number 1 is plan your work before you work your plan. All right. Number 1, plan your work before you work your plan. So many of us are excited about doing something for God that we never sit down to plan it out. All right. You got to learn how to plan your work, and then go to work and work your plan. All right. You got to plan your work before you work your plan. So let's look at it. Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 11 through 16. Let's look at it. So I arrived in Jerusalem 3 days later. I slipped out during the night, taking only a few others with me. I had not told anyone about the plans God had put in my heart for Jerusalem. I didn't tell anybody about it. We took no pack animals with us except the donkey I was riding. After dark, I went out through the valley gate, past the jackal's wall, and over the dung gate to inspect the broken walls and the burned gates. Then I went to the fountain gate, to the king's pool, but my donkey couldn't get through the rubble. So though it was still dark, I went up to the Kidron Valley instead, inspecting the wall before I turned back and entered again at the valley gate. The city officials did not know I had been out there or what I was doing, for I had not yet said anything to anyone about my plans. I had not yet spoken to the Jewish leaders, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or anyone else in the administration. All right. So a couple of key things. Verse 12, he says, I slipped out during the night, taking only a few others with me. All right. That's the key to this whole passage. Watch what Dr. John Blaxland, professor of international security and intelligence studies, says this. Get this right here. The secret to success is keeping your success secret. Say it one more time. The secret to success is keeping your success secret. What does that mean? That means you got to focus on building a strong foundation and avoiding premature external interference. All right. It can also suggest we must focus on the process of success rather than the outcome. If God has given you a vision, God has given you an assignment, it will come to pass. If it's of God, it will come to pass. So you don't have to sit around and worry about the outcome. Just focus on the process. All right. Focus on the process of success and let God handle the outcome. All right. And so many of us, we get super excited about what God is getting ready to do. We get super excited about God has shared something in us, and we got this burning sensation in our heart. And the first thing we want to do, we want to tell somebody about it. But Dr. Blaxland said the secret to success is keeping your success secret. All right. Completing your assignment requires knowing when to plan, when to speak, and when to go to work. All right. And so many times, we've heard it before. Don't share your dreams with people too soon. All right. So I want to pause. This is where I want to get to so we can have some dialogue from this point on moving forward. But why do we hear that all the time? Why did Dr. Blacksland and others share that with us? Don't share what God is doing in your life too soon. All right. Don't share it too soon. Why did they give us that advice early on? Why is that so important? And if someone knows a personal story of why that happens, you can share it at this time. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. Why do we need to keep it secret while we're laying the foundation? Let's talk deeper. So listen to what Nehemiah says. So I arrived in Jerusalem 3 days later. I slipped out during the night, taking only a few others with me. All right. I slipped out during the night. Notice that. I slipped out during the night. While everybody else was asleep, I'm planning my work. I'm planning my strategy. All right. Taking only a few others with me. All right. I had not told anyone about the plans God put in my heart for Jerusalem. All right. I hadn't told anybody about the plans God put in my heart for Jerusalem. All right. We took no pack animals with us except the donkey I was riding. All right. Here it is. There's always the temptation to share your plans with other people. All right. There's always that temptation to share your plans with other people. Here's the two reasons why. Number one, most of us share our plans because we're wired to get affirmation. All right. Girl, let me get your opinion on this. Girl, what you think I ought to do? Let me get your opinion. Hey, man, what's your thoughts on this? Hey, man, what do you think about this? Hey, man, I need you to give me your opinion on this. And sometimes God has given us a word for us, and we want people to confirm and affirm what God has placed in our spirit. All right. And if God didn't share that with them, they may not understand it for you. All right. And so you got to understand, don't keep trying to get a motion and a second for what God has placed in your spirit. All right. And so many times I've seen people, they're on fire, and then they go talk to somebody who's walking around with a water hose trying to put people's fire out. That's all they ever do, is because if it's been down for 142 years, what makes you think you're going to be the one to solve it? That's their mentality. If it's been broke for 142 years, what does that have to do with you? Nehemiah, you got a good job. Nehemiah, God has blessed you with a good job as a cupbearer. Why you want to go and do all of that? And so you got to be very careful that you don't share it with others so they can give their opinion and then they talk you out of it before you know it. All right. And so there's a temptation to get affirmation. And then sometimes we're just trying to talk to other people. Hopefully they'll give us assistance. All right. Hopefully they'll give us assistance. And sometimes God is placing it on our hearts and you're like, oh, that'll be a good person to talk to because they can help me with it. And then they talk you out of it because they really don't want to help. They know if you step out on faith, then I'm going to have to go with you. All right. If you step out on faith, that's going to involve me and you. And then I told you last week, sometimes people don't want you to do it because it's going to make people look at them and say, hey, man, you've been here for 30 years. Why you haven't done it? All right. And so you got to understand that the reason why you can't share your plans is, number one, God hadn't spoken it to them. All right. God has not put it in their hearts. Notice what Nehemiah says. God had placed this in my heart for Jerusalem. All right. So he didn't share it with everybody because God didn't give it to them. And I tell young pastors all the time, the hardest part about leadership and being a pastor is you trying to get majority of people who don't talk to the Lord to do something for the Lord. Teach, pastor. You're trying to get people who ain't talked to the Lord all week to see the vision for God and God's house. So that becomes a challenge. And so Nehemiah shares with us tonight, when God gives you an assignment, you got to be careful that you don't try to get affirmation and confirmation from people who don't know your assignment. All right. And so now don't get me wrong. Proverbs 11:14 says this: where there is no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. All right. So you have to have some people that you can talk to but you don't talk to them so they can talk you out of it. All right. So you got to be very, very mindful. So let me share with you, and Miss Gladys and some others hit the nail on the head. Look at Genesis 37. Now Joseph had a dream. God gave Joseph a dream. God gave Joseph a vision. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Here's what I tell people all the time. If they hate you already, what makes you think they're going to be excited that God's getting ready to do even more in your life? Oh, Lord have mercy. So you got to understand that you can't share it with everybody because they already don't like you. All right. They already don't like you. All right. So you got to understand that when God gives you an assignment, you have to get counsel from others. You need to get counsel from others because the Bible says in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. But I always like to talk to people who have vision themselves. All right. If you talk to people that's not going anywhere, guess what? They want you to stay there with them. They want you to stay there with them. Misery loves company. All right. So you got to understand this part is crucial. This part is crucial. Before you work your plan, you got to plan your work, and you can't plan with everybody. All right. You can't plan with everybody. Look at what Acts 9 says. Look at what Acts 9, 10 through 15 says. Now, there was a disciple at Damascus named Ananias. The Lord said to him in a vision, "Ananias," he said, "Here I am, Lord." And the Lord said to him, "Rise and go to the street called Straight, and at the house of Judas, look for a man of Tarsus named Saul, for behold, he's praying. And he has seen a vision, a man named Ananias come and lay hands on him so that he might regain his sight. But Ananias said, Lord, I've heard from many about this man, how much evil he has done to your saints at Jerusalem. And here he has authority from chief priests to bind all who call on your name." So watch this. The Lord had to convince somebody that Saul had an assignment. Let me say that one more time. The Lord had to convince this man. What makes you think you telling them your dreams is going to get their blessings? All right. Some people have made up in their mind, man, for what you've done and how you think and how you ain't finna do this. All right. You're not finna do this. And so they'll try to talk you out of it because here's what they'll say. "I'm just trying to save you from making a big mistake." And so you got to be very, very careful that in this stage, Nehemiah said, "I slipped out at night. I worked my plan. I'm looking, I'm putting it together by myself, and I'm taking very few people with me. I hadn't told anybody about the plans that God put in my heart." All right. God put it in your heart. All right. So here's what I tell you. Here's what I tell people all the time. If God has given you a vision, nobody can talk you out of it. But if it didn't come from God, then you need people to talk you up to do something that you want to blame on God. Teach, Pastor. All right. So if I really didn't hear from God, I know it wasn't God, it's just something I want to do, I can get people to talk me into it. All right. But if God has placed it in my heart, you can't talk me out of it. All right. You can't talk me out of it. So you got to understand that Nehemiah shares with us that there comes a season where behind the scenes, you're planning your work before you work your plan. And some people look at you and think you procrastinate. No, I'm getting all the facts. I'm gathering all the details. I'm working my plan behind the scenes before I make it public. All right. So now let me show you another one. All right. Look, after dark, I went through the valley gate, past the jackal's wall, over the dung gate to inspect the broken walls and burned gates. Then I went to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, but my donkey couldn't get through all the rubble. All right. So there was so much rubble that I couldn't even get through on my donkey. All right. So I want you to look at the battle now between facts and faith. The facts are there are broken walls. The facts are there are burned gates. The facts are there is so much rubble that you can't pass through. Faith looks beyond the problems and sees the potential. Here's where a lot of people get up. When you start looking at how big the problem is, you start looking at, man, I didn't know it was this bad. I'm looking at these broken walls. I'm looking at these burned gates. I can't even get through on my donkey. So here's what I'm going to say. Now I understand why it's been down for 142 years. You're right. I can't do this. It's not for us. So you're going to get to that place where the facts can make you say, I'm not going to do it. Whew, Lord have mercy. But if it comes from God, your faith will look at the facts and then look beyond the facts and see the potential that God has shown it could be. All right. So you got to know that you're operating between facts and faith. And some people get super spiritual that they don't even look at the facts. I ain't even look at the facts. I don't care what the facts are. No. You look at the facts because you got to count your costs. We'll get into that in a minute. You look at the facts so you can make detailed analysis. All right. Faith says, I'm looking beyond the problems. But superficial faith says, I'm not even going to look at the problem. I don't care what the problem is. My God is bigger than the problem. No, he looked at all of the problems and then said, hey, let's make it happen. So you got to understand that faith is not the absence of facts. Faith is just not letting facts be the final answer. Whew, Lord have mercy. So you got to understand that Nehemiah goes through and he sees how bad it is. He goes through, he sees the burned gates. He sees the broken walls. He sees all the stuff in the streets. He sees the rubble that's everywhere. And he says, you know what? We can make it happen. We can make it happen. And so that's similar to Numbers 13. Watch what happens in Numbers 13. After exploring the land for 40 days, the men returned to Moses, Aaron, and the whole community of Israel at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran. They reported to the whole community what they had seen and showed them the fruit they had taken from the land. All right, so they got evidence. This was the report they said to Moses. We entered the land you sent to explore, and it's indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here's the kind of fruit it produces. All right. So they got evidence. Of what God says. But there's a word on the screen in red in verse 28. There's a word on the screen in red in verse 28 that kills a lot of vision. There's a word in verse 28 in red that kills a lot of assignments. Notice what it says. But the people living there are powerful. God is just like you said it was. It's beautiful. There's grapes there. It's flowing with milk and honey. It's a bountiful land, but the people there are bountiful. Their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants, the descendants of Anak. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites live along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan Valley. Have you ever talked to someone and they always telling you the negative? They're always concentrating on the negative. They're always talking about what's going to go wrong. They're always trying to tell you who said this and who couldn't do what. And Caleb, I love me some Caleb. Caleb says, quiet. Let's go at once and take the land. We can certainly conquer it. Caleb said, if God said it, we can do it. And I like people like that. I don't like people that are negative, people that don't want to step out on faith. That's it. The naysayers. Hey man, it's giants over there. There's some Canaanites over there. There's Amalekites over there. God already told you that they were there, and he told you that we're going to defeat them. All right. But verse 31, but the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. They disagreed, all right? Two people can see the same thing. One says, I'm not going, and the other one says, hey, let's roll. If God be for us, who can be against us? You got to be careful whose counsel of advice you're listening to, all right? Notice what they said. We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are. So watch this. So they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw are huge. Everything they said is true. Yes, they're huge. Yes, there's people there, but God says, I'm giving it to you. Ooh, Lord have mercy. So you gotta come to this conclusion that before the plan even gets developed, before they even start construction, there are those who are already spreading a bad report. There are those who don't want progress. All right. So you got to understand that when God gives you a burden, know that not everybody is cheering for you to be successful. All right. You got to understand. So your faith has to look beyond the problems and the people and keep seeing the potential. You got to keep looking beyond what they say to see the potential. All right. And here's what I'm saying. We don't operate on blind faith. We are commanded to count the costs. Look at what Luke 14 says. For which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he laid the foundation is not able, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. All right. Or what king going to war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000. All right. So God says to us, I'm not telling you to just wake up one morning and say, you know what? Woo, God placed it on my heart to do something different. No, that's not what I'm saying. Once you sit down, you look and investigate, you count the cost, you look and you say, God, I see what you're saying now. Then once you've counted the cost, trust God for the outcome and stay focused in the process. Whew, Lord have mercy. So you gotta get to this place where you learn how to plan your work. Plan your work. What comes with that? Not telling everybody. What comes with that? Counting the cost. What comes with that? Having a faith that looks beyond my right now to see my after a while. All right. And here's the challenge. I didn't put this in the slide. Here's the challenge. Once you begin, there's going to be some turbulence anytime you start something new. All right. Anytime you step out on faith, there will be turbulence. So be prepared for them to say, I told you, see there, I told you it was better if you'd have done this. It would have been better. But you got to stay focused on the whole process. Somebody can testify you stepped out on faith, you trusted God, and you had some lean months, you had some lean years, but now when you look back at it, it was the best decision you ever made in your life. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was difficult. Yes, I had to walk by myself. Yes, I had to cry myself to sleep. Yes, there were some nights I had to rob Peter to pay Paul, but through it all, I learned how to trust in God. And where I am now, the saints of old said, I wouldn't take nothing for my journey right now. I believe I got some witnesses who can testify. Pastor, I thank God for my faith, because if I'd have listened to them, I'll still be where I was. But thanks be to God, I had the faith to trust God. All right. So you got to get to that place. You got to get to that place where you count the cost. You look at what God says. You plan your work, and then you work your plan. All right. So I'm gonna pause right here. If there's someone who has something that you want to add, or you have a question that you want to ask. I want to pause right here, because this point right here is very, very, very important. And this is where I see a lot of people falter, because they are so excited about sharing their plan. They're so excited about telling somebody, and it don't take but one person to kill your dreams. All right. So if you got a question or comment or something you want to add, I want to pause right here to talk about it. Let's go to the second point. So the second thing I want to look at tonight is that once God has given you the burden, and you've worked your plan, you've went and you've looked and you've surveyed the land, you've dotted your I's, you've crossed your T's, you're looking at what you're facing, you got an idea, you got a concept, you got a strategy, you got a plan. So now here's that point in the plan where God gives divine connections that lead to completion. All right. God gives divine connections that lead to completion. All right. I love Nehemiah because he gives us this format. He said, I went through it by myself at night. I went through it with just a few people at night, but then I came back to the group. And listen how he starts. In verse 17, he says, but now I said to them, all right, there comes a point where you've got your plan together, you've got your strategy, you've prayed about it, you've heard from God, you've counted the cost, you've done all of the necessary preparation, and you got to understand this. If God gave you purpose, if God gave you assignment, purpose always has partners. God never gives you an assignment for you to do by yourself. All right? Purpose always has partners. God is going to give you divine connections that lead to completion. All right? So here's the challenge. Here's what he says. But now I said to them, you know very well what trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace. Then I told them about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. They replied at once, yes, let's rebuild the wall. So they began the good work. All right. So in verses 10 through 16, he's surveying the land. He's getting all of his plans together. Then he comes back and shares it with them. And it ends by saying, hey, let's go to work. All right. So here's the challenge. For many people, it's not that you were not created to conquer. You've been created to conquer, but your companionships keep you from completion. Whew, Lord have mercy. It's not that you hadn't been created to conquer. It's you got some companionships that may keep you from completion. All right. So you gotta monitor your companionships. You gotta monitor your partnerships. You gotta monitor who you're hooking up with, trying to do something special for God. All right. So you gotta be very careful that God gives partners, but you gotta discern, is this the right partner for this purpose? All right. So I noticed that Nehemiah gives us some steps to getting others to join in the assignment. Here's some steps. There's 4 steps that I see in here. Number 1, you gotta be mindful that I make sure I present the problem. All right. Sounds very simple, but sometimes people ask me to do stuff and I don't really understand what we're doing. All right. I don't really understand what we're doing. So if I don't have clarity about the problem, then I can't give you my opinion for a solution. All right. So Nehemiah presents the problem. He says, hey, man, there's a lot of stuff. The Jerusalem, the walls are broken down. They're lying in ruins. The gates are destroyed by fire. We need to rebuild the wall. That's the what of the assignment. We need to rebuild the wall. All right. So that we don't be an embarrassment, a disgrace. All right. So number 1, he presents the problem. He gives them the what of the assignment. Then number 2, he identifies with the problem. Remember this, Nehemiah got a good job. Nehemiah got a great job. He's in a heavy administration in the Persian kingdom. He's the cupbearer for the king. He's one of the most popular and productive people in the kingdom. He don't live here. This is 900 miles away from him. This is his hometown, but he don't live he don't live there anymore, but he makes it a we thing. Oh, Lord have mercy. I tell guys all the time, you will never get the congregation to do anything if you don't make it a we thing. Y'all ain't doing this. Y'all need to straighten up. Y'all need to do this. Y'all need to get up. Y'all sorry. Y'all don't want to do nothing. No, it's a we. It's a we. Notice what he said. Let us build the wall. We are in trouble. All right. We are in trouble. All right. So you got to identify with the problem. People will never join in with you if they don't think you're a part of it. All right. Then you got to visualize the completion of the problem. He says, hey, let's rebuild the wall. He paints the picture of the wall being built and we're not an embarrassment anymore. That's the wow of the assignment. That's the reason why whenever I get ready to share something with Mount Olive, it's always going to be a visual. When I get ready to share that we're getting ready to move into a new facility, I'm going to have somebody to design the facility so that we can have a wow moment. Wow, I can see that. I can see us walking into that. I can see us walking out of one building into the other one. I can see us in that sanctuary. I can visualize it in my mind. In order to get people to join in with you to buy into the vision, they got to have that wow moment. They got to have that what, that we, and that wow. All right. And then the last thing is he gives them assurance of the provisions to the problem. All right. He said there's two things. I like how he has the balance. He says, the hand of God is on me. The hand of God is on me. And then he also said, I talked to the king and he hooked me up. All right. And so that's important because there are some people that are out of balance. There are some people that are out of balance. All right. You got to have balance. All right. Yes, God's going to give you balance. Yes, God's going to give you provision. Yes, God's going to make a way. Yes, God's going to do that. But what's your plan? Do we have somebody that's going to give us this? Do we have somebody that's going to do this? Do we have somebody? And this is what he said. The hand of God is on me, but I also spoke to the king, and here's what he's going to do. All right. So one of my buddies uses the expression, and you've heard it all your life. Some people are so spiritual that they're no earthly good. All right. So Nehemiah shows us there's a balance. The hand of God is on me. The hand of God is on me. But I also talked to the king, and he gave me the timber. He gave me the security. He gave me everything I need to get it done. But the hand of God is on me. But I talked to the king, so the balance is there. All right. And so sometimes we say, God gave me this vision. What's your plan? I'm trusting God. Okay. What else? What you gonna do? I'm trusting God, my Savior, the one who's always been there for me. I'm trusting God. I'm trusting God. I got favor on my life. Yes, that's awesome. That is good. But if you want people to join in the assignment, you got to give them the assurance that the provisions are there. All right. You got to give them the assurance that there's a plan there. That's the how of the assignment. So if you want to get people to join in with you, if you want to get people to join in with you, have you presented the problem well? Have you identified with the problem? Have you painted the picture of what it's going to look like when it's over? And have you given them any kind of assurance that everything's going to be all right? And I tell y'all all the time, I don't join in a lot of things. I don't sign up for a lot of things. I don't get involved in a lot of things because some people got fuzzy faith. And I only have a certain amount of time. And if you don't know where we're going, we're probably going to be lost. All right. So in order to get people to join in, not buy in, but to join in kingdom building, in kingdom assignments, you have to be clear. All right. And if there is no unity of vision, there will be no unity of purpose. All right. So once Nehemiah presented the plan to the people, once he gave them that wow moment, once he let them know he's on board with them, here's what the people said. Let's roll, dog. I mean, the people said, let's go. The people said, let's rebuild the wall. They were excited about moving forward. All right. So if you've talked to everybody and nobody shares the vision with you, nobody is encouraging you, nobody is really on board with you and what God has placed in your heart, here's what you got to do. Look in the mirror and say, have I presented it clearly? Have I given them a visual picture of what I'm doing? And have I given them assurance that God's going to provide for the problem? All right. So those are some things. So those are some things that we got to do. God's going to give us the connections we need. But I've discovered this: when you're sitting in front of investors, when you're sitting in front of people, they want to know, are you sure about your plan? Are you sure about your plan? All right. So God gives divine connections that lead to completion. All right. So here's the challenge. Verse 19 says, but when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you're doing? I answered them by saying, the God of heaven is going to give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. As for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it. All right? Sometimes separating from people that are not part of the project is easy. It's easy and it's obvious. All right? Whenever I get ready to do something, I already know those who are not on board. It's obvious they don't want me to win. It's obvious that they don't want me to be successful. I know them. I know them. Those ones are easy. I expect them to give me opposition. I expect them. They are born to say no. They are born to criticize success. That is their purpose in life, is to criticize anything positive. Those people are obvious. But there are other times when you must hear from God, the one who gives success, and you got to separate from those who you thought were divine connections. Whew. Here's where it gets sticky. Here's where it gets sticky. You got a plan. You got a plan. You got a plan. God has given you a plan. God has given you an assignment. It's heavy on your heart. And you think, okay, I got some people that's going to be with me. I got some people. I know I can count on my homies. They've been with me since day one. I know this is my day one right here. This is my day one. And I know, oh, girl over there, look at her. She's a hater. She don't want me to do nothing. I already know she's not with me. But here's what God does sometimes. The Lord said to Gideon, you got too many. You got too many for me to deliver them into your hand. He didn't say you didn't have too many to win. He said you got too many for me to deliver. All right? Make sure you hold on to that. You got too many for me to give you the victory. All right? In order that Israel may not boast against me that her own strength has saved her. Announce now to the people, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. All right. So 22,000 left while 10,000 remain. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many. Take them down to the water and watch this, and I will sift them for you there. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. When God gives you a divine connection, hear me well. When God gives you a divine connection, he's very intentional who he wants to be a part of the assignment. And so many times God keeps blocking what you think is supposed to be a blessing because you got people who God knows are planting seeds of doubt. God knows they're talking behind your back. And so God keeps telling you, hey, you're not going to get victory with them. And you say, no, God, we've been homies since kindergarten. And God keeps saying that's why you can't get to first grade. All right. So you got to understand, God says there are some seasons where he says to us, you got the wrong people in your crowd. And I love what verse 4 says. Go to a place, and I will sift them for you. Lord have mercy. And I believe I got some witnesses who could testify. You were sitting there one night and God showed you some people. God showed you some things. And you're like, oh my God, God showed me who they really are. God showed me who they really are. And here's what we always say, but we very rarely do. When God shows you who they are, not when they show you who you are, but when God shows you who they are, believe him. He says, go down to the water and I'll sift them for you. I'll sift them for you. And then I'm going to tell you, this one go with you. This one go with you. All right? See, you're trying to do the right thing with the wrong people. Teach, Pastor. But what you got to do is rely on God to reveal the necessary partners to complete your purpose. All right? Rely on God. Rely on God. I tell people all the time, I never move until I hear from God who's supposed to be a part of the assignment. And sometimes he don't talk for months. And I'm like, okay, God, it's time to roll. And he said, I'm going to give you the right moment. And then a situation comes up. And I was like, okay, God, I hear you loud and clear now. Because watch this. Here's where we mess up. And I want you to get this part. I didn't put it in the slide, but I want you to get this part. A lot of times we include people in the assignment that we know, but God says they're not necessary. You only included them because that's all you know. God says they're not necessary for this assignment. So keep walking by faith, and I'll send you somebody that you don't know, but I know they're necessary. Ooh, Lord have mercy. Teach, Pastor. And so you got to understand, me and Aunt Val was talking a little while ago, and we always come back to the same conclusion. Sometimes we're wondering, how did I get in this door? How did I get a chance to sit down with this person? How did I get a chance to meet this person? How did I get a chance to meet this person? I got a meeting next week with a well-known author. He read the book, and he's got some other projects he want to get with me and talk about. And I'm sitting there wondering, how in the world did I get in touch with this guy? God says, for your necessary season, for your next season, I'm going to send you the necessary partners, not the known partners, but the ones that's necessary. All right. And so you got to get to this place where you rely on God to reveal the necessary partners to complete your purpose. Oh, boy. So let's pause right there. Let's pause right there. Why is it so hard? Let's talk right here. Why is it so difficult? Not for you, because you got it down. But why is it so difficult for your cousin them, to separate from people that you see are a hindrance to them fulfilling their assignment? Why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult for us to separate from people when it's obvious that they really don't want us to succeed? Here's the last one. We've talked about planning your work, working your plan. We've talked about how God will give you divine connections. But here's the last one. Be prepared to fight until the finish. All right? Be prepared to fight until the finish. Be prepared to fight until the finish. A lot of times, we just talked about it, we give up because we don't want to come out of our comfort zone. We're familiar. And then sometimes we don't feel like going and fulfilling our assignment, doing what God calls us to do, because I don't feel like fighting. I don't feel like fighting. I've had God share some things with me, and I'm like, God, I ain't for that fight. They ain't gonna try it now. I don't even feel like fighting. And I've said, I'll do it later. And I've taken a whipping. I was like, okay, God, I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up. Sometimes you just don't want to fight. Sometimes you just don't want to fight. And so if you're going to fulfill your assignment, if you're going to fulfill your purpose that God has placed on you, if you're going to deal with that burden that comes with the assignment, you have to be prepared to fight until the finish. All right, until the finish. Notice what it says in chapter 4. It says, Sanballat was very angry when he learned that we were rebuilding the wall. All right, he flew into a rage and mocked the Jews, saying in front of his friends and Samaritan army officers, what does this bunch of poor, feeble Jews think they're doing? Do they think they can build the wall in a single day by just offering a few sacrifices? Do they actually think they can make something of stone from a rubbish heap? All right, they're making fun of them, they're mocking them, and they call them a little poor, feeble Jews, and they think they're going to finish in a day, and they're upset, they're angry because we started rebuilding the wall. All right, so as you advance, be prepared for adversaries to be added. All right, be prepared for adversaries to be added. I've studied Nehemiah several times when we went through the building project. I've studied it, I've taught it, I've preached it. But I noticed this when I was doing this the other night. As you make advancement, as you make progress, the enemies are going to be added. All right? Here's what I'm discovering. People that don't like each other will come together to stop your advancement. They can't stand each other, but now they both have a common denominator. They both don't like you. All right. So they'll come together to make sure you don't accomplish what God has placed on your heart. All right. So watch this. This is very interesting. In Nehemiah 2:10, it says, when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard about this, they were very much disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. So in Nehemiah 2:10, notice who's there: Sanballat and Tobiah. All right. Nehemiah 2:19, when Sanballat the Horonite Tobiah, the Ammonite official, and Geshem, the Arab, heard about it. They mocked and ridiculed us. All right. So in 2 and 10, Sanballat and Tobiah. In 2 and 19, Sanballat, Tobiah, and now Geshem, the Arab, who don't like the Ammonites. All right, they are warriors against each other, but we got a common enemy, so let's come together and stop them. So when you get to chapter 4, Nehemiah 4 and 7, here's what it says: But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. Notice the difference between chapter 2 and chapter 4. All right, notice the difference between chapter 2, verse 10, and chapter 4, verse 7. All right, it started out just Sanballat and Tobiah. And now we're at Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod. All right. I'm just trying to tell you, you're wondering where all these haters come from. They're coming because you're advancing in purpose. When you're not doing anything, they have you right where they want you. All right. As long as you're not doing anything, as long as you're not advancing the kingdom, as long as you're not productive, as long as you're not helping nobody, as long as you're not encouraging nobody, as long as you're not helping other people get on their feet, as long as you're not lifting other people up, they could care less what you're doing. Hey, go to church, shout all over the place. It don't matter. You're not going to help nobody get on their feet. But when you start advancing the kingdom, when you start helping other people realize they are more than conquerors, when you start helping other people realize I'm a business owner, I'm a CEO, when you start helping other people realize I don't have to settle for living like this, I can do more than this, I don't have to settle for average when excellence is an option, then Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, the men of Ash, they all come together to stop you. All right. And some people will say, well, Pastor, if all them gonna come, man, I might as well stop. No, let them all come, because that's a bigger audience. And here's what God says: I'm gonna prepare a table before you in the presence of all your enemies. So God said, I got too much food for just me, you, and 2 other haters to be there. I need more haters so that when I do bless you, when I do bring you out, when I do complete what I told you I was going to do, they will know that I'm God all by myself. All right. And so watch this. The adversaries keep growing, but so does my faith in God. All right. And so you gotta understand that as you begin to walk in purpose, as you begin to advance in the kingdom, people that don't normally get along will start getting along just so they can come together and stop your plans. But if God be for you, it really don't matter who's against you. Let me say it one more time. Remind you, just in case you hadn't heard it. If God be for you, it really don't matter who's against you. All right. And so you got to understand that you're going to have to fight not just these, but it's going to grow as you grow. All right. And here's the shout. I know Sanballat is an enemy. I know Tobiah is an enemy. I know the Arabs are in. I know they're in. This opposition is recognizable and expected. All right. It's expected. I expect these adversaries. All right. But it's the ones you don't expect that hurt the most. Oh, Lord have mercy. It's about to get a little sticky right here. It's about to get a little sticky right here. Yeah, it's gonna get sticky right along in here. I can deal with the Sanballats, the Tobiah. I know they don't like me. They are known enemies. They are known enemies. I know they don't like me. All right. But watch this. Verse 10 says, then the people of Judah began to complain. The workers are getting tired, and there is so much rubble to be moved. we will never be able to build the wall by ourselves. Meanwhile, our enemies were saying, before they know what's happening, we will swoop down on them and kill them and end their work. The Jews who lived near the enemy came and told us again and again, they will come from all directions and attack us. So here's the question you got to ask yourself. Are you prepared to deal with the opposition within the camp? I know you can fight. You ready for Tobiah. You ready for Sanballat. You ready for the Ammonites. You ready for them. You know they're enemies. But here's the question. Are you ready to deal with the opposition in the camp? All right? Notice what's happening. The people are becoming discouraged. The people are becoming fatigued. The people are becoming fearful. Pressure from without often create problems from within. Ooh, Lord have mercy, Jesus. Pressure from the outside. Tobias and Sanballat and Geshem, all of them are talking, and all of them are creating fuss. Now the people that I'm close to that said they're going to build with me, now they're getting tired on me. Now they're getting frustrated. Now they're getting scared on me. All right. And it's simply because of the pressure from the outside. They're listening to the noise on the outside rather than hearing with me from God. Whew, Lord have mercy. They're looking at the work. They're looking at the work. They're looking at how bad it is. And watch this. They're becoming defeated. They're becoming defeated. All right. But Nehemiah keeps looking to the Lord and he stays determined. All right. One group is looking at the work. They're becoming defeated. Nehemiah says, I ain't looking at the work. I ain't looking at what could go wrong. I'm looking at the Lord. And if the Lord says he's going to give me victory, I'm going to keep my eyes on him. One group is defeated. One group is determined. So the question I got to ask you, where are you looking? Where are you looking? Are you getting fatigued? Are you getting fearful? Are you getting discouraged because you're looking around and say, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. I don't think we're going to be able to make it happen. Be mindful that not every form of opposition is outside. Some people close to you don't want you to succeed. Some people close to you don't want you to step out on faith. They want you to stay in that familiar comfort zone. But when God has placed something on your heart, I gotta be obedient to God rather than man. Whew, Lord have mercy. So you gotta be prepared. You gotta be prepared to deal with opposition from the outside and opposition on the inside. Pastor C.E. McLean said this one day when I first got to Shreveport. He said to me, he said, young preacher, remember this. He said, don't spend all your time trying to fight the woodpeckers on the outside. You better be mindful of the termites that's destroying your church from the inside. And I was like, okay, I didn't know what that meant because I wasn't pastoring then. I didn't know what it meant. But then as I got a little older, it's not the people on the outside that you got to make sure you keep an eye on. Sometimes your biggest enemies, your biggest threats are not the ones that's outside. Some of them may be under the same roof. Some of them may be at the same church. Some of them may sit right beside you at work. Some of them may be your ace boon coon. You don't know where opposition is coming from. You just got to be prepared to fight. All right? You got to be prepared to fight. And watch this. Here's another one. Be careful of people who should be loyal, but their allegiance is limited. Teach, Pastor. Teach, Pastor. Be careful of people who should be loyal. All right? They should be loyal, but their allegiance is limited. Hear me well on this one. Hear me well on this one. Hear me well on this one. Here's where it could get sticky. Here's where it could get sticky. Nehemiah 6:17 says, during those 52 days while we were building, many letters went back and forth between Tobiah and the nobles of Judah. Okay, let me show you something. Remember I told you Tobias from day one. He don't like me. From day one, Tobias has been an enemy. From day one, Tobias said, what do you think you're doing? From day one, Tobias says, you're not going to be. From day one, I know Tobias was an enemy. But notice what it says in up at the top. Then the people of Judah begin to complain. Then the people of Judah begin to complain in verse 10. But then in chapter 6, it reveals something that he found out later on. Tobiah and the people of Judah, that's my cut. That's who I'm working with. All right. So look at what it says. Letters were going back and forth. Lord have mercy. Letters are going back and forth between Tobiah and the nobles of Judah. I'm working with Judah. Then all of a sudden they start complaining. All of a sudden they said we can't do it no more. All of a sudden they've lost their energy. They've lost their enthusiasm. They've lost their spirit to keep going with me. What happened? They were sending letters back and forth between them and Tobiah. They talking to the enemy. They keep chatting with the enemy. And notice what verse 18 says. For many in Judah had sworn allegiance to him because his father-in-law was Shekinah, son of Era, and his son Johanna was married to the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berekah. All right. So what does that mean? They started out like they were loyal to you. They're in the camp with you, but they're talking to them. They're talking to them. Watch verse 19. They kept telling me about Tobiah's good deeds. And then they told him everything I said. Let me see if I can make this clear. We got somebody in the camp. We're working together. There's an enemy on the outside saying, hey, I'm going to get y'all. I'm going to make sure y'all don't build. I'm going to make sure y'all don't do this. I'm going to make sure y'all don't rebuild that wall. And I'm working with Judah. I'm working with the nobles of Judah. We're working hand in hand. Hey, man. Tobiah, he's really not that bad. I know he lied on you. I know he dug this, but he really not that bad, man. We go way back. Okay. Well, here's what we're going to do, guys. Next week, we're going to do this. We're going to go do this. We're going to do this. And I keep wondering, where are the doggone leaks coming from? I know I'm not by myself. You know you only told a few people, and now how in the world does everybody know what you're getting ready to do? How is it that they know your next move? Because you know the Tobias, you know the Sanballats, you prepared for them. You weren't prepared for the ones who were with you that were spreading, Lord have mercy, the plans. All right. And this is what I love about God. If you stay faithful to him, God will show you where your leaks are. Woo, teach, Pastor. God will show you where your leaks are. And sometimes you're wondering why the enemy always know your next move is because not everybody that wears the same uniform are on the team. Teach, Pastor. Not everybody that's with you is really for you. All right? And this is what I love about Nehemiah. Nehemiah says they kept telling me how good he was, even though he said he was going to kill us, even though he said he was going to tear the wall down. But they kept saying he's a good person. He's not that bad. And then all of a sudden I figured out they were telling him everything we said. They were telling him every move we was getting ready to make. And this is what God says I'll do. Sometimes I'll give you an opportunity so that I can reveal people who's really not for you. And see, sometimes you're disappointed because it didn't work out. God says it wasn't never for you to do that. I just needed to show you something. Oh, God. And so this is what you got to understand. If you allow God to speak to your spirit, he'll show you those who are for you and those who are against you. And here's where spiritual maturity comes in. Judas sat at the table with Jesus, and he kept treating him good. He kept treating him kind. Grown-ups, people with faith, and people who are prepared to finish their assignment. God has already showed me who you are, but I can treat you with kindness because this thing is bigger than you. Woo, Lord have mercy. This thing is bigger than you. So I don't treat you unkind. I don't treat you bad, even though I know you're not really for me. All right. So this is where a fight comes in. Fight is not me against you. The fight is me maintaining who I am, even when God shows me who you are. Be be careful. Be careful of those who should be loyal, but their allegiance is limited. And I said it in Sunday school on Sunday. I said it in Sunday school on Sunday. When I hear you tell me what people said about me, I often go back to this question: why are they so comfortable talking about me around you? What made them so comfortable to say that around you? All right. So you got to understand that sometimes God will show you things. Sometimes God will show you things, and you got to have the mindset to know that my fight is not just on the outside. My fight is making sure I know that not everybody is for me. All right. So let's wrap it up with this. How do you deal with it, Pastor? How do you deal with it? Because I think all of us got to deal with that. When you got purpose on your life, it's not the ones you think is going to fight you. It's the ones you thought would have your back. That's where it hurts. That's where the pain comes in. Those who you thought had your back, God reveals to you. Yeah. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? Let's close with this. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? Verse 13. So I placed armed guards behind the lowest parts of the wall in the exposed areas. Oh, Lord have mercy. I placed armed guards behind the lowest parts of the wall in the exposed areas. I stationed the people to stand guard by families, armed with swords, spears, and bows. Then, as I looked over the situation, I called together the nobles and the rest of the people and said to them, "Don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord, who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes." When our enemies heard that we knew their plans and that God had frustrated them, we all returned to our work on the wall. But from then on, only half my men worked, while the other half stood with spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. The leaders stationed themselves behind the people of Judah who were building the wall. The laborers carried on their work with one hand supporting their load and one hand holding their weapon. All right. All the builders had a sword belted to their side. Lord have mercy. That's why I love the Bible. So here's 4 things you got to do if you want to deal with opposition. You got to be prepared to fight. You got to deal with opposition. Number 1, you got to give attention to exposed areas. All right. When God shows you the areas of weakness, when he shows you the areas of warfare, when he shows you where the leaks are, now you got to put somebody there to guard against those exposed areas. Your biggest problem is God keeps showing them to you and you leave yourself exposed. No. Nehemiah says, I made sure I place some bowdy Christians right there. All right. Let me tell you what they did, and you keep an eye on them for me. All right. So number 1, you got to give attention to your exposed areas. All right. You know your weaknesses. God has already showed them to you. You know where they're trying to attack you. So make sure you give attention to those exposed areas. And then you have to watch what he does. He establishes a family atmosphere. Notice what he says. Hey, man, fight for your brother. Fight for your son. Fight for your dad, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Here's what I discovered. There are some people, if you even think about hitting their brother, hitting their sister, hitting their son, their daughter, their wife, oh, it's on. It is on. All right. It is on. And that's why God calls us the family of faith. All right. So you got to provide an atmosphere that I love my pastor. I love my brother and sister in Christ just as much as I love my blood brother. All right. And you got to provide that atmosphere. We're in this together. When you hurt, I hurt. When you need some help, I'm going to provide the help. You got to establish a family atmosphere. And this is what he says. He said, man, fight for your brothers, fight for your sons, fight for your daughters, fight for your wives. And then he also says, number 3, direct your attention toward God. when they said, we're going to make sure we come in and we're going to attack y'all and we're going to do all this, he said, remember the Lord. Remember the Lord who is great and glorious. Remember the Lord. I don't care where they come from. God is a sword and a shield. God will protect. He'll protect you going out. He'll protect you going in. Remember the Lord. Keep your attention focused toward God. Don't let them get you distracted. Direct your attention toward God. But here's my favorite. Number 4, maintain a balance between your faith and action. Maintain a balance between your faith and action. So many people have gotten it twisted that Christians are just weak and wimpy and they just like that God stuff. No. We know how to balance between our faith and action. Notice what Nehemiah says. Nehemiah says in verse 13, I got some armed guards in the exposed areas. At the end, he said they got sword, they got spears, and they got bows. On the other hand, he said they got one hand on the Bible. They got the other hand on their spear, their bow, their shield, and their mail. On one hand, they got a weapon, and the other hand, they doing their work. They got a sword on their belt. What he's saying is you got to have some balance. And so many people, they just let people talk to them any kind of way. They let people do whatever they want to. And I can't believe a child of God said that. No, when you are facing warfare, here's what the Bible says. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. All right. And so you got to understand, we are in spiritual warfare. The world thinks they can just say anything about the church, say anything to you, say anything about you, say anything about your leadership. They say anything they want. You got to get to that place where Nehemiah says, some stuff you got to deal with. Some stuff you have to deal with. And this is why I love the Bible, because when Judas came up and he tried to kiss Jesus and they began to take him away, Peter's first response was to pull out his switchblade and start cutting. And Jesus puts the man's ear up and he says, Peter, you shouldn't have done that. No, that's not what he said. He says, now is not the time. Go back and read your Bible. He said, now is not the time. No. Now is not the time. And so you got to understand, I'm not promoting violence, but the Bible says that Nehemiah was prepared. Nehemiah was prepared. And some of you are out of balance. Some of you are out of balance. And I tell people all the time, well, I'm just going to pray about it. No, I'm just going to pray. No, some stuff you got to confront. Some stuff you have to confront. Some stuff you have to deal with. All right. Some stuff you have to deal with. And people think they can do anything, say anything. But Nehemiah says, if people are going to stop God's work, they are coming with violence. They are coming to destroy your works. And you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared. And this is what I love about Scripture. Nehemiah says they are coming with everything they got. And the church and the people of God, we ain't saying nothing back. We ain't saying nothing back. No. You're going to have to get to that place. You got to get to that place where you got to balance faith and action. All right. You got to balance faith and action. What am I talking about? Nehemiah understood that these people were trying to destroy what God was trying to build up. And I keep saying it, we've let the world back us in a corner. Every time you turn on social media, every time you turn on this, they're always talking about the church, these judgmental people, the church. These pastors just want your money, the church. At some point, when are we going to start fighting back? When are we going to start talking about what God expects from us and them? And this is what I'm talking about. He says there has to be a balance between your faith and an action. At some point, put feet to your prayers. All right. And so this is what I love about Nehemiah. Nehemiah says, if you're going to do something special for God, expect warfare. Expect warfare. Expect the enemy to come with everything he has. The question is, are you prepared to fight? Are you prepared to put people in place that can guard your back while you complete your assignment? And let's just be honest, all of us. Y'all have heard me say it all the time. I got aunts, I got uncles. There are some that I know if I need a prayer, I can call certain family members. If I need prayer, I can call certain family members. But if there are those that prayer can't get you, you don't get the prayer. I got some others, and that's what I love about the body of Christ. Not everybody's different. And you laughing at me, you talking about me, but you got them too. You got a cousin, you got an uncle that if somebody say something about you, hey, it's on, it's on. And so you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared to have people in your life that are prepared to help you complete your assignment. So here it is. Plan your work. Plan your work before you work your plan. The secret to success is keeping your success secret. All right. God gives divine connections that lead to completion. Purpose always has partners. All right. Remember that. Purpose always has partners. Every day you wake up, God, send me the necessary people I need to complete this assignment. God, I cannot do this by myself, but I know you got somebody that's scheduled to partner with me to do what God has called me to do. And then last one, be prepared to fight until the finish. The enemy is coming with violence. The enemy is coming to take it by force. You need to maintain a balance between your faith and your action. All right. Some stuff you got to sit back and just pray about it and give it to God. And some stuff you got to confront. All right. Some stuff you got to let them know. Hey, I know what you're doing behind the scenes. I know what you said. I know what you're trying to do. Hey, I'm just letting you know I know about it. Some stuff has to be confronted without being confrontational. All right. It has to be confronted without being confrontational. All right. So these are some keys. These are some keys that can help you fulfill your assignment.